Hello and welcome to this lecture on logic and reasoning. After this video, students will be able to define inductive and deductive reasoning, distinguish between inductive and deductive reasoning, and identify when to use each of these different types of logic and reasoning. So there are two types of logic and reasoning that we use in science. The first is deductive reasoning. With deductive reasoning, if our evidence is true, then the conclusion is correct. We're going to use general principles that are known to be true in order to verify a specific conclusion. So in general, this will look like having a theory, making some observations, and drawing a conclusion about those observations. With inductive reasoning, the conclusion is not necessarily true even if all the evidence is true, because the conclusion goes beyond the evidence. Here we might use specific instances of something happening to make generalized conclusions. So in a lot of ways, deductive reasoning is like going from theory, hypothesis, data collection, conclusion, whereas inductive reasoning is about going from data collection to developing a theory. So here we have some more examples. We have inductive research here on the left, where it says that we start with some observations, we see a pattern or a law, we come up with a tentative hypothesis that explains those patterns, and from those hypotheses we can test them and develop a theory. And so inductive reasoning begins with our research question and the collection of data, which are then used to generate the theory. Deductive reasoning, on the other hand, works from the theory all the way down to the confirmation. So we're working kind of in the reverse with deductive research. Deductive research starts with a theory. We come up with a specific hypothesis drawn from that theory. We go out and collect observations in order to test that by hypothesis, and then we confirm or disconfirm our hypothesis. So the deductive approach usually begins with a theory, then a hypothesis, data collection, and finally the analysis. So here are some examples of inductive reasoning. We start with our observation. Here's an example: a low-cost airline flight is delayed. We go look for a pattern. Another 20 flights from low-cost airlines are delayed. So we develop a theory that all low-cost airlines are going to have delays. May not be true, but based on the observations and data we collected, that makes sense. So we're essentially taking a sample and developing a theory based on that sample. Dogs A and B have fleas. We go out and check a bunch of other dogs. They all have fleas. We conclude that all dogs have fleas. Finally, elephants depend on water to exist. All observed animals depend on water to exist. Therefore, we assume that all biological life depends on water to exist. Here are some examples of deductive reasoning. We're going to start with an existing theory, such that low-cost airlines always have delays from our previous inductive examples. We then come up with a hypothesis. If passengers fly with a low-cost airline, then they will always experience delays. We are then going to go out and collect data to test that hypothesis. We collect flight data for a bunch of low-cost airlines, and we find that 5 out of 100 flights from low-cost airlines are not delayed. So we're going to reject our hypothesis that they will always experience delays if you take a low-cost airline, because 5 were not delayed. So that disproves our hypothesis. Our next example is, again, all dogs have fleas. That's our starting theory. If that theory is correct, then all the pet dogs in my apartment building should have fleas. So let's go and test all the dogs in my building. And we find that only 50% of the dogs in my buildings have fleas. We're going to reject my hypothesis. Finally, we're going to start with the theory that all biological life depends on water to exist. So in order to test that, we say that, okay, all land mammals depend on water to exist. That's our hypothesis. So we go and collect data on all land mammal species to see if they depend on water, and we find that yes, all land mammal species depend on water to exist. That's going to support our hypothesis. So we use both of these types of reasoning in our research. Inductive reasoning is frequently used when we're doing samples, when we're taking a sample of something and drawing a conclusion about a population. And deductive reasoning is frequently used when we want to test theories and see if theories are true. We also use inductive reasoning to generate new theories, possibly if we find that we are observing a new pattern or a new type of behavior. We may use inductive reasoning in order to generate those explanations or theories that we can then go on and use deductive reasoning to test. Well, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.